Well, hi everyone. I am back with another fabulous episode of Tattoos and Toddlers. I seriously have the best guests. I have the best people on the planet in my life right now that are amazing people that know what it's like to have compartmentalized lives of working with family, but also want to do art and then have fun tattoo stories too. I love this podcast because I get to meet and talk with so many people that kind of already know, but that I also meet strangers off the street and drag them onto my podcast. But today's special guest is Heather, who I've known from Promoting Passion. I've had her on my Punches of Pink before. I've had her. We have so much fun at all the Promoting Passions together to make art. And this past year, I got to photograph her haunt character, Lady Obscura. So Heather, please introduce yourself and tell us of all the wonderfulness that is you.
Hey, my name is Heather. I'm in Colorado. My life is very compartmentalized because I have a whole lot going on. So, I work as a social worker of sorts, doing some adult foster care like stuff. Um, it's pretty rewarding. I'm the head of that department, so it's big responsibility.
Yeah.
I am a mother of four former toddlers. They're teenagers and adults now.
Aw.
They're a bunch of fun. Two of my boys are special needs. So that adds an element to parenting that isn't always there. We are connected to Special Olympics and do a little bit of volunteering through them, but do a lot of activities with Special Olympics. I'm an artist, both through photography and acting. The acting gig, as Jen mentioned, is a haunt character. So I work for a commercial haunted house for about 6 weeks out of the year. It normally funds either vacations or winter holidays. But all of those things can definitely pile on top of each other.
I was gonna say the list just keeps going, and I'm like, okay, Heather, do we have time to sleep and eat?
Sometimes.
Well, I'm so glad you could be with me today because we were going to talk a little bit about just your life in general, but
Yeah.
some of the things that are on your mind about compartmentalizing the time that it takes for your job, your family, and other things that you are passionate about. So, and also I don't mind diving into some of the neurodivergence, things as
Yeah.
well, because there's a lot of people that maybe haven't even heard your story or your family story,
Yeah.
and so let's kind of dive into some of that right now. Let's go.
Okay. So it is very important to me that um, my life makes room for neurodivergence. And neurodivergence generally, a lot of people think of autism right off the bat with neurodivergence, but it isn't just that. Neurodivergence is people that think differently than others for one reason or another. So it can be autism. It could be ADHD. It could be mental health diagnoses. It could be a variety of learning disabilities. I'm dyslexic. My brain just doesn't register some words the same way everybody else does.
Wow.
Um, and that looks different for everybody. I'm a fantastic reader, and I always have been. And read at an adult level in elementary school, but I couldn't spell the word "there" properly until my early 20s, which is kind of weird. But it is what it is. But the beauty of having a different minded way of going about things is it adds such a beautiful layer to how we get there. And it opens up doors where people saw walls, which is kind of neat.
Okay, we can mic drop right there. That was really good. And I think that was important because as you're sharing your insights and into your brain and how you function, it lets us into your mind a little bit and into your world. Like, how many times do we
Yeah,
close everybody off to our worlds because it's too embarrassing or we're
right.
too ashamed to share parts of ourselves with other people? So I thought that was I'm going to quote that. That was great. Um,
Thank you.
how does this work in your everyday life? Like, as a pattern in your family, are there things that you struggle with that, or are there some amazing things that you've been able to tackle as a, say, a Neurospicy family that is, let us into your world for just a second about all of that and how it might work on a daily basis?
Well, I guess I can start with one of the ways that I've built my staff and how things work.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
most people have a 9 to 5 and they show up at 9, and if you're late at 9:05, you're getting written up, and you need to take your lunchtime at a certain time and all of that good stuff. That's not how my work life works. My work life is very flex. I show up when I show up. And sometimes that is 7 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes that is 9:30 in the morning. Um, I work 40 hours a week, but how I get to my 40 is fine. I tend to be someone who dives in and they'll put in a 10-hour day and then have a half day on Friday. Um, Same thing with my lunches. Sometimes I need to take a lunch at 10 o'clock. Sometimes I want to take a lunch at noon. And there's no one who's telling me, outside of a few popped in meetings, where how I accomplish my goal. And that's kind of the philosophy I've carried on is I don't care how you get there as long as you get there. Um, I can provide some skeleton around what I think you should do, but how you fill it in is definitely up to you. So my staff doesn't have hardcore, this will be done every Tuesday. It's more or less like, you know, our hard deadline is the end of the month. If you're
Mm.
squared away by the end of the month, you're good. Because that takes into account that we have good days and bad days, and whether that's physical health or mental health or motivation, it's really important. And I also work from home 2 to 3 days a week, because different environments, foster different ways of doing things. So there are some tasks I need to be in an office, with the horrible fluorescent lights, but double screens. Other times I need to be on my couch with my cat, and both are valid. And I think that that principle is really bled into my life in a lot of different ways, particularly with my middle son, who's more impacted by his autism. He also has an intellectual disability. And the fact that when he was young, his special ed coordinator, who was an amazing woman, um, told me if I measured him on my timeline, he would fail me repeatedly. But if I measured him against himself, I would see success almost every day.
Wow.
And so that's kind of a philosophy that I've carried through, not just with him, but with a lot of things.
Honestly, I think every one of us can take that away today as well.
Mm.
Like, all of us have a timeline,
Yeah,
whether or not we think about it or
yeah,
not. Some of us simply do have a timeline of things that we expect of ourselves or expect of other people.
right,
And it's just kind of like, in some ways, just giving yourself a little bit of grace to just be on the journey no
right,
matter what the
yeah,
timeline. And for me, like, no matter what the pathway, right? Like, the
right,
pathway is going to look so different for everybody else.
for
And I
sure.
think some of our biggest hurdles is to be able to not compare ourselves to every single person on the planet because
Right.
we are so unique in our journey. So
Mhm.
I'm so glad that we're opening up this little can of worms here, because this is great, because
Yeah,
I get to
definitely.
know you a little bit better, which I've always had the pleasure of knowing you and, and meeting you in person,
Yeah.
but to get to know how your mind works and how you think has been so much fun already. Like, we're only a few minutes in.
Thanks.
So as we're kind of walking along this journey, what are some tools that you have embraced in even this last year, that have really helped you and your family? And let's say, like, you're going to do a lot of traveling coming up. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of things I'd like to know about how you work these things into your life, as well as, the fun stuff, as well as the hard struggle stuff.
Well, a schedule is really important. But I used to be very meticulous. I would have
Mm.
it schedules down to the minute. On top of all of this, I used to, went to college a little later, so I did that with kids and double majored, and so I had that other layer, and I absolutely had to have it down to the minute. This is when work stops. I've got 15 minutes from job to
Wow.
school,
Yeah.
and that's done with. But I've learned that in order for my mental health to be less impacted, I have to have looser schedules.
Yeah.
I have to add some high points, such as I'm going to write this document today. And then I have lesser points. I'd like to, you know, file this. I'd like to sort this. I'd like to, go out to tea with my daughter. And though those things might not always happen, it's fine. And then there's the things that happen by happenstance and allowing time for life to just occur, which didn't happen for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's
And it's
yeah,
important.
that's wonderful because, we all have the opportunities to enjoy our life. This has been
Yeah,
a recurring theme over the last few months as it was popped to me in a question, are you enjoying your life?
right.
And I was like, as far as I know, I am. It's
Right.
like, of course, we're always going to have those days where we're like, oh my God, and we're lamenting about stuff that seemingly doesn't matter, but it's a part of
Right.
our humanity to
Yeah.
express emotion, right? But overall, like, I'd like to think that I'm liking my life a lot.
Yeah, there you go.
But as we kind of go into, scheduling, I think is really great because my husband is super scheduler down to the minute, no matter what. And he's been confessing the need for that routine and the need for things to be compartmentalized down to the minute, and it works for his life. It's efficient. It makes him feel some kind of a security, right? Like almost like
Yeah,
a little security blanket, which I think is fantastic. I'm obviously a little looser in my schedules.
right.
um, but I forget to schedule fun, Heather. Not
Yeah,
gonna lie.
for sure.
So this weekend, I'm gonna take my baby to the Barbie World thing. So there's a Barbie
Nice.
World
That'll
pop
be
up over here
fun.
in Dallas.
Very
And,
cool.
spending time with you, I mean, you've got 4 kids, like,
Yeah.
how do you or do you, like, try to compartmentalize time with each of them separately, or do you make a group event kinda thing, like a big family fun thing? Like, now that your kids are, like, you got some older, you got some younger, you got a little bit of
Mm.
mixture there.
So, and I pray my mother doesn't watch this, but when I was a child, I was the oldest of 5, and there
Aw.
was never a lot of time for anything individual. It was,
Yeah,
I have time for children, I don't have time for you. And I don't
exactly.
mean that in an insulting way. I mean that that's what time she had. So I have always made sure that my children got individual time. Um, and sometimes individual time looks like tagging along to the grocery store,
Absolutely.
but then I'm gonna buy you the Pringles, and none of the other kids got the Pringles. You got the Pringles, for helping. But it wasn't about helping. It was about recognizing that you needed time. And also, one of those neurodivergent things is boys in particular. Teenage boys don't always communicate very well face to face. It's just intimidating to them in a way that they're not quite equipped, most of them, to handle.
Yeah.
So, sitting next to a teenage boy, is a more effective way to communicate. And you do that in the car, and you do that when you're grocery shopping, and it kind of allows them to kind of open up without having to look you in the face to tell you the weird thing that they want to know, or the cool detail, or you know. So that really works. But I yesterday I had tea with my youngest son and my cousin for his upcoming birthday, and then brought him home, and then had a late snacky lunch with my daughter. Um
Aw.
yeah, so two of them got some time together or with mom yesterday, and then the other two, it'll be next week or the week after.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that because I do I've only got one, but then I think about how much is too much time, and then but
Yeah.
she's been begging me a lot lately to play with her, and I have a really hard time with
Yeah.
believe it or not. Y'all all be judging me and expecting me to do things as a mom, but I'm like, "No, I really do have a hard time." I love doing art with her, but
Yeah.
when it comes to like, "Let's go play school," or "Let's go play," I'm just like, "I'd rather sit and do art with you." I just,
Yeah.
I know we all have our things that we enjoy.
Right,
Um,
right.
but I do love those car moments because it really is an intimate setting for anything can
Mm.
happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that so much. Um, I was gonna try to think of what else can we dive into as far as what we wanna
Well, I also,
leave people
as far
with
as my
today.
kids go, I
Yeah.
have something called yes days where I don't tell
Ooh.
them it's a yes day, but it means I'm going to say yes to almost anything they suggest. And sometimes the things that they'll come up with are nothing I would have imagined. Um, we've definitely gone on some adventures with yes days.
Yeah, I mean, there was a movie called that as well, I think, where the
Hmm.
parents as a family, they couldn't say no, and they're like all of a sudden they're doing all this cool stuff or whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah.
As Miracle gets older, I'll probably start, throwing that stuff in there. Right now, I just kinda go in there, and it's so great because, asking your kids and treating them like people, like, not
Yes. Yeah.
just they're your offspring, they're people, they're little people that have their
Right.
own interests and their own ways of doing things, and it's been exciting to explore that, and I know that you've got 4 of them, so it's
Yeah.
like you're individually exploring each of them, and then, the things that y'all do as a family. Are there some things that y'all do as a whole family that is you scheduled time for that as well?
Um, we like to watch movies.
Yeah.
Not always the same kinds of movies, not always in the same kind of way,
Mhm.
given the whole divergence thing. But we try to make time to watch, movies together. Normally at home, because not everyone can handle the theater,
Yeah.
and that's enjoyable. My husband really likes to go out to eat, and so sometimes that's his kind of bonding moment is for all of us to go out, but we're a family of 7, so that doesn't happen all the time. 'Cause
Yeah, when you do the math.
yeah, it becomes a bit much, and then, something that I've done with my kids that not a lot of married women do is, I have bonding time with just my children that doesn't involve my spouse,
Yeah.
and, we've traveled a bit, and he's just not into that. But, my kids and I have drove to California, we've drove to Yellowstone, we've gone on little getaways,
Aw.
to different resorts that's just us, and though it doesn't include everybody, it's pretty close.
I think that is quite fun because I'm about to have a mom-daughter trip myself, and
Nice.
it's different when it's just the 2 of you, or for me, just the 2 of us.
Yeah,
And I'm just having let daddy have his time,
yeah,
for whatever time that he needs, and then vice versa. If, we kind of like shuffle things back and forth and see what works for our family. It's pretty neat. Like I really the quality time when we're turning everything else off, we're not at work, we're not playing
right,
around, we're just having that good quality sit time with our family. I
yeah,
think it's fantastic. Um, so I just found out some new things about you, which is fantastic about these tattoos. So I want to kind
yes.
of like dive into these tattoo stories as well
Okay,
as we're rounding out this episode about, what it's like to have a neurospicy family and also be a neurospicy yourself.
yes. I have 3 tattoos. My mom promised me that if I waited till I was 18, she'd pay for my first one. It's a
Ooh.
blue butterfly with blue roses on my ankle.
Aw.
Um, it's flash pretty much. I didn't know what I was looking for or needed. I just wanted a tattoo because I was 18 and old enough to do it. Um, the second one is on my ankle. That was a lesson in no matter how unprofessional they are, don't piss off the person who's gonna tattoo you.
Oh
I
no.
I had this idea for these stars. I drew it all out. I told him exactly what I wanted. He did the outline, and then I was supposed to come back for color, and he canceled on me 3 times, and I had to go to the manager of the tattoo shop and say, "Hey, look, I've got a half done tattoo. I keep making appointments showing up at your shop, and he's not doing the work." Um, and the owner said, to the guy, you'll finish this. And I should have just went elsewhere. I should have, it isn't horrible, but it is not what I designed. And I was 19 and wasn't bold enough to say, you know, that that's not quite what I wanted. And then the last one, again, may my mother not watch this podcast. Um, but my mother in an intoxicated state talked me and my sister into getting matching tattoos with her. Originally, they were supposed to be hummingbirds to honor my great grandmother. somehow between there and then hummingbirds turned into black bears. She showed them
What?
what she wanted. Yeah. Um, she went in, got it tattooed on her chest. My sister went in and got it tattooed on her back. And then I, the only one with some tattoo experience, walked in and said, "Oh my God, that's what we're getting tattooed on us." Um, but at that point, I'd been bragging about how I was going to get a tattoo right here on my arm for a long time. And um, I went ahead and got the icky bear put on my arm. And I called it my love and pride tattoo for a long time because I got it because out of love. But my pride forced me to put it on that arm. And I had it on that arm and wouldn't wear tank tops and was just kind of embarrassed by it for a long time. And then about 2 years ago, maybe, yeah, 1 to 2 years ago, I just said, I've had enough and I'm going to get this thing covered up. And I did. It's got a beautiful collage of outlines of flowers. It's kind of hidden. Um, and the bear is still there. It is black, but it's far more hidden in the scape. And then when I get around to getting color one of these days, it'll blend even
Oh my gosh, that's really funny. Hummingbirds to black bears.
more. Yeah, yeah.
Now, I was gonna say, what was the experience like too? Like, a lot of people who've never had tattoos, they like have no idea what a tattoo parlor is or what it looks like or how they felt when they walked in. What was it like walking in for your first tattoo ever? Had you already known what it was like to get one? Like
No, no,
watched people or
nope. My father didn't have any tattoos. My mother didn't have any tattoos. I have one wild uncle who's far more mainstream than anyone gives him credit for, but he's wild for our family. He had some big tattoos. But other than that, I didn't know anybody who
Oh my gosh. So you just walked in there and like, all right, let's do this.
Yep, and the lady was nice and like I said, other than it being Flash and me not recognizing it was Flash, then and I wanted a blue butterfly and I wanted blue roses, and that's exactly what I
That is so
got.
funny. My first tattoo was in a little underground, I think it was called the Underground Tattoo in Wichita, Kansas,
Okay.
because it was not legal in Oklahoma at the time where I was
Gotcha.
staying. And so we drove across the border, we meaning my wonderful, influential college roommate. And I was definitely of age, of course, but it was so funny to look back now on how I approach tattooing to now.
Right.
And every tattoo since the first two have been more and more meaningful, I
Yeah.
guess. Even my little $10 tattoo I just got in Vegas, like I felt like this little alien ship was just the cutest thing ever. And it was so serendipitous to find a little alien ship inside this art install in Las Vegas and take a photo with
Yeah.
that. And I was like, oh, this is so much fun. And those little tiny tattoos, you're in and out in no time. But yeah,
Yeah.
the bigger ones are a longer commitment.
Yeah, I know that you can't see me do the podcast, but this one, I mean, it's pretty big.
Wow, that is
So it's
huge.
up most of my arm. The
Yeah, that's
plan is
basically like a
probably
cap sleeve
send it.
right there.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the ugly bear is right in there.
That is so funny. But yeah, I love the fact that we can get creative on our bodies, we can
Yeah.
get creative with our family time, we can get creative with living with our how our brains work and just being in love with our life and
Yeah.
how we are built and being
Yeah.
okay with who we are. So as we round out our episode today, this has been fabulous to talk to you today and just get to know you a little bit more about, everything in your life and everything that how you approach life as well with your family. What should we leave people with today? We've covered everything from, schedules to, being with people wherever they are. Um, how should we leave our episode today?
Um, I think that the way to leave it is that whatever the goal is, there are many paths to it. Some paths are straight on a sidewalk, and other ones are up a sheer face. But you can get there. Some people need different tools to get there. but everything you've ever dreamed of is obtainable.
Absolutely.
And don't hesitate to ask those in your circle and around you and community wise or family wise to help support you.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that's a perfect way to round out our episode. And, you know, even if you start with the ideas of hummingbirds and ends up with black bears and goes back to something artistic, this is a really good talk about how you can start with one thing, it becomes something else, but then it becomes something else again in our lives as we go along the pathways. So yes, I'm talking in tattoo speak, but that's we're very visual people, and I love learning visually. And so when I think about our tattoo journeys, even especially on this podcast when we talk about tattoos, like it is a process and you have to sit there for it.
Right.
So I'm gonna leave y'all with that. I'm gonna leave y'all with that today. Like if you've signed up for it, then you're signing up for the process, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt a little, but it's gonna be beautiful when it's done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for coming on today.
All
And I
right.
look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing you very soon. Not that much longer, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon. So
All righty.
until next time, everyone, have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.